You contributed nothing to this marriage, Diana. Nothing to our success, nothing to our wealth, nothing meaningful at all. My husband of 22 years delivered these words with cold precision across the mahogany conference table, his attorney, nodding in agreement as they presented their case for why I deserved minimal support in our divorce settlement. What Robert didn't know was that my lawyer, Catherine Walsh, was about to reveal documentation that would expose the truth about who had really built our family's fortune. And it wasn't him. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of the downtown Denver law office cast harsh shadows across the faces gathered around the conference table that Tuesday morning in March. The room smelled of leather briefcases and expensive cologne, an atmosphere of corporate formality that felt surreal given that we were discussing the dissolution of what had once been a loving partnership. Robert sat confidently beside his attorney, Thomas Brennan, a silver-haired litigator known for his aggressive tactics in high-asset divorce cases. His posture radiated the same authority he had wielded throughout our marriage, the unshakable certainty of a man who had never questioned his own narrative about our relationship and respective contributions. I am Diana Castellanos, and at 45 years old, I found myself fighting for recognition of contributions that had been invisible to my husband, despite their fundamental importance to everything we had achieved together. For over 2 decades, I had supported Robert's career as a commercial real estate developer while building my own consulting practice, managing our household, raising our 2 children, and maintaining the social and professional networks that had been crucial to his business success. Yet sitting in that sterile conference room, listening to him systematically diminish every aspect of my participation in our shared life, I felt the full weight of how thoroughly he had convinced himself that his achievements were entirely self-made. Robert's claims were delivered with the same confidence he brought to business presentations, each assertion presented as indisputable fact. Diana has been essentially a housewife for the duration of our marriage, he stated, his voice carrying the patronizing tone I had grown to recognize over the years. While I built Castellanos Development from nothing into a $50 million enterprise, she occupied herself with volunteer work and social activities. Her so-called consulting business generates minimal income and has never contributed meaningfully to our family's financial success. His attorney reinforced these characterizations with legal language that transformed my 22 years of partnership into a narrative of dependence and minimal contribution. According to their presentation, I had been a beneficiary of Robert's success rather than a contributor to it. They acknowledged that I had maintained our household and cared for our children, but framed these contributions as personal choices rather than sacrifices that had enabled Robert's career advancement. The consulting work I had developed over the past decade was dismissed as a hobby rather than recognized as the strategic business advisory practice it had become. The most painful aspect of Robert's testimony was not the financial implications of his characterizations, but the casual dismissal of contributions that had been central to our family's success and his professional advancement. He spoke as though my management of our household operations, coordination of his business entertainment, maintenance of relationships with key clients and partners, and strategic advice during critical business decisions had been either non-existent or irrelevant to his achievements. Diana's lifestyle has been entirely supported by my earnings, Robert continued, his confidence unwavering despite the presence of my attorney and the documentation she had prepared. She has made no significant financial contributions to our marriage, has no meaningful professional accomplishments, and should be grateful for the generous support I am offering in this settlement. The settlement offer he referenced was indeed structured around his narrative of my minimal contributions. Robert proposed to retain primary ownership of Castellanos Development and the commercial properties that comprised the bulk of our assets, while offering me what his attorney characterized as reasonable spousal support based on my perceived needs rather than my contributions to our shared success. The offer would have left me financially secure but dependent, with no recognition of my role in building the wealth we were now dividing. Catherine Walsh, my attorney, listened to Robert's presentation with the calm attention of someone who had encountered similar narratives in numerous high-asset divorce cases. Catherine was a partner at Davidson, Walsh & Associates, a firm specializing in complex divorce litigation involving significant business assets and disputed contributions. Her reputation had been built on meticulous preparation and her ability to document contributions that were often invisible or deliberately minimized during divorce proceedings. I had selected Catherine based on recommendations from two friends who had navigated difficult divorces involving successful husbands who had similarly dismissed their wives' contributions to shared success. Catherine's approach involved comprehensive analysis of financial records, business development patterns, and documented evidence of partnership contributions that extended beyond traditional financial metrics. Her preparation for my case had been extensive, involving months of investigation and documentation that Robert and his attorney appeared to have underestimated. The morning's proceedings had begun with Robert's attorney presenting their narrative of our marriage as a traditional arrangement where Robert's professional success had supported my lifestyle choices. They characterized our relationship as one where clearly defined roles had resulted in Robert bearing primary responsibility for financial success, while I had focused on domestic and social activities. This framing positioned their settlement offer as generous, given what they portrayed as my limited contributions to our shared wealth accumulation. Robert's testimony had been carefully prepared to support this narrative, emphasizing his individual achievements while minimizing or dismissing instances where my involvement had been crucial to his success. He spoke about building his development company through his own vision, networking abilities, and business acumen, making no mention of the strategic advice I had provided during critical decisions, the client relationships I had helped him cultivate and maintain, or the operational support that had enabled him to focus on business development while I managed other aspects of our shared responsibilities. The characterization of my consulting practice as insignificant reflected Robert's long-standing dismissal of work that did not conform to his understanding of traditional business success. Over the past decade, I had built a strategic consulting practice focused on helping small and medium-sized businesses optimize their operations and develop growth strategies. My clients included several companies that had achieved significant success following implementations of strategies I had developed, but Robert had consistently viewed this work as secondary to his real estate development activities. Robert's confidence during the morning's proceedings reflected his genuine belief in the narrative he was presenting. Throughout our marriage, he had increasingly positioned himself as the primary contributor to our family's success, while viewing my various contributions as supportive but not essential. This perspective had developed gradually over the years as his business success had grown and his professional identity had become more central to his self-concept. The social and professional relationships that had been crucial to Robert's business development were another area where his testimony revealed significant blind spots about my contributions. Many of the key relationships that had led to his most successful development projects had originated through social connections I had cultivated and maintained over the years. Client dinners, industry events, and community activities where important business relationships had been developed were areas where my participation had been essential. Yet Robert seemed genuinely unaware of the strategic value of these contributions. The timing of our divorce proceedings reflected broader changes in our relationship that had been developing over several years. As Robert's business success had grown, he had become increasingly dismissive of contributions that were not directly tied to revenue generation or business development. My consulting work, household management, and relationship maintenance activities were viewed as less important than his commercial real estate activities, creating a dynamic where my contributions were systematically undervalued. Catherine's preparation for challenging Robert's narrative had been comprehensive, involving analysis of financial records, business correspondence, and documented evidence of my contributions to our shared success that extended far beyond traditional measures. Her investigation had revealed patterns of contribution and partnership that contradicted Robert's characterization of our marriage as one where his individual achievements had supported my lifestyle choices. The evidence Catherine had prepared addressed multiple dimensions of partnership contribution, including financial analysis of how my consulting income had supported our family during Robert's early business development years, documentation of my strategic involvement in key business decisions, evidence of my role in developing and maintaining crucial business relationships, and analysis of how my household and family management had enabled Robert to focus on business development activities. The morning's proceedings concluded with Robert's attorney summarizing their position and reiterating their settlement offer, confident that their narrative of minimal contribution had been effectively established. The formal presentation of their case reflected their expectation that the evidence would support their characterization of our marriage and justify their proposed division of assets and ongoing support obligations. Catherine's response to Robert's presentation was measured and professional, acknowledging their position while indicating that she had prepared comprehensive documentation that would present a significantly different perspective on my contributions to our shared success. Her calm confidence suggested that the afternoon's proceedings would reveal information that Robert and his attorney had not anticipated or fully considered in developing their strategy. The lunch recess provided time for reflection on the morning's proceedings and the stark contrast between Robert's narrative and my understanding of our partnership over the past 22 years. The dismissive characterization of my contributions felt like a negation of not only my professional and personal sacrifices, but also the collaborative relationship I had believed we shared throughout most of our marriage. Robert's confidence during the morning session reflected his genuine belief in his narrative, but it also revealed the extent to which he had become disconnected from the collaborative aspects of our partnership that had been essential to his success. His testimony suggested that he had not only minimized my contributions in preparing for the divorce, but had also lost awareness of how integral my support had been to his business development and professional advancement. The afternoon session would reveal whether Catherine's preparation had uncovered documentation sufficient to challenge Robert's narrative and demonstrate the true extent of my contributions to our shared success. The stakes of this challenge extended beyond financial considerations to encompass recognition of partnership contributions that had been systematically undervalued and dismissed throughout the gradual deterioration of our marriage. As we prepared to reconvene after lunch, I realized that the day's proceedings represented more than a dispute over asset division and support obligations. They had become a confrontation over competing narratives about partnership, contribution, and recognition that would determine not only the financial terms of our divorce, but also the validation or dismissal of 22 years of contributions that had been essential to everything we had achieved together. The sterile conference room would soon become the setting for revelations that would fundamentally alter Robert's understanding of our partnership and his own success, forcing him to confront documentation that would expose the true foundation of the wealth and achievements he had claimed as entirely his own. Catherine's preparation was about to transform the proceedings from Robert's confident presentation of minimal contribution into a comprehensive demonstration of partnership contributions that had been invisible to him but essential to everything we had built together. The devastating blow of Robert's dismissive characterization of my contributions was about to be answered with evidence that would reveal the uncomfortable truth about who had really been the driving force behind our family's success. And it was not the person sitting confidently across the conference table, completely unaware of what the afternoon would bring. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The lunch recess provided a necessary pause from the morning's proceedings, but it also created space for a flood of memories and realizations that had been building beneath the surface of my consciousness for months. As I sat alone in the small consultation room adjacent to the main conference area, reviewing Catherine's notes and preparing for the afternoon session, I began to recognize patterns in Robert's behavior and our relationship dynamics that I had previously dismissed or rationalized. The systematic dismissal of my contributions that Robert had displayed during his testimony was not a new development created for the divorce proceedings. It represented the culmination of a gradual process that had been occurring throughout our marriage, becoming more pronounced as his business success had grown and his professional identity had become increasingly central to his self-concept. What had once been subtle minimization had evolved into complete erasure of my role in our shared achievements. I found myself mentally reviewing specific incidents over the past several years where Robert had demonstrated similar patterns of dismissing or minimizing my contributions to our family's success. During a dinner party we had hosted for potential investors in one of his development projects, Robert had presented himself as a self-made entrepreneur who had built his company through individual vision and determination. When one of the guests had mentioned my consulting work and asked about my role in supporting his business development, Robert had responded with a dismissive comment about my little side projects, while redirecting the conversation to his own achievements. The pattern extended to how Robert discussed our partnership in professional settings and social situations. Over the years, I had noticed that his descriptions of our marriage and respective roles had gradually shifted from collaborative partnership to a narrative where he was the primary contributor and I was the supportive spouse who had benefited from his success. This evolution had been subtle enough that I had initially attributed it to his growing confidence and professional success, rather than recognizing it as a systematic devaluation of my contributions. Robert's treatment of my consulting practice revealed another dimension of the pattern that had become increasingly problematic over time. When I had first begun developing my strategic consulting services, Robert had been supportive and had even provided some introductions to potential clients through his business network. However, as my practice had grown and begun generating significant revenue, his attitude had shifted from support to dismissive tolerance. He frequently characterized my work as a hobby, rather than acknowledging it as the professional practice it had become. The financial aspects of this pattern were particularly revealing when I examined them systematically. During the early years of Robert's business development, my consulting income had provided crucial financial stability for our family, while he was establishing Castellanos development and building his initial client base. My earnings had covered our living expenses and allowed Robert to reinvest his development profits back into the business, rather than using them for immediate family needs. Yet in his testimony that morning, Robert had completely ignored this period of financial contribution, focusing instead on the later years when his business income had exceeded mine. The pattern also extended to Robert's treatment of my strategic advice and business insights. Throughout our marriage, Robert had frequently sought my input on business decisions, particularly those involving client relationships, strategic positioning, and operational challenges. My background in strategic consulting had provided valuable perspective on problems he was facing, and many of his most successful business decisions had incorporated recommendations I had provided. However, over time, Robert had begun to minimize or forget my contributions to these decisions, gradually rewriting the history of his success to exclude my involvement. The social and networking aspects of our partnership revealed perhaps the most systematic example of Robert's pattern of minimizing my contributions. Many of the key business relationships that had been crucial to his success had originated through social connections I had cultivated and maintained over the years. Robert's tendency to focus intensively on business development had left little time for the broader relationship building that was essential for long-term success in commercial real estate. I had filled this gap by maintaining relationships with clients' spouses, developing connections with community leaders, and creating social opportunities where business relationships could develop naturally. Robert's dismissal of these contributions reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of how business relationships develop and are maintained in his industry. He seemed to believe that his technical expertise and deal-making abilities were sufficient for success, without recognizing that the trust and personal connections that made deals possible were often developed through the social interactions and relationship maintenance that I had provided. His morning testimony had completely ignored this dimension of our partnership, treating his business success as though it had occurred in isolation from the broader relationship network that had supported it. The household management and family coordination that had enabled Robert to focus on business development represented another area where the pattern of minimization had become increasingly problematic. During the early years of our marriage and, while our children were young, I had managed virtually all aspects of our household operations, from financial planning and bill paying to coordinating childcare and managing our social calendar. This comprehensive support had allowed Robert to dedicate the time and mental energy necessary for building his business without being distracted by domestic responsibilities. As Robert's business success had grown, he had begun to take this support for granted while simultaneously minimizing its importance to his achievements. He frequently made comments about how his business success had enabled my lifestyle choices, without acknowledging that my household management had been essential to creating the conditions that allowed him to pursue business opportunities. The characterization of my domestic contributions as personal choices rather than strategic support reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of the partnership we had created. The pattern of minimization had also affected Robert's treatment of my role in our children's lives and development. I had been the primary parent responsible for coordinating our children's education, extracurricular activities, and social development, while Robert had focused on his business responsibilities. This division of labor had been mutually agreed upon and had worked effectively for our family, but Robert had gradually begun to minimize the complexity and importance of parenting responsibilities, while emphasizing the financial support he provided through his business success. The educational and developmental support I had provided to our children had required significant time, energy, and strategic thinking, particularly as they had grown older and their activities had become more complex and demanding. I had researched schools, coordinated with teachers and counselors, managed college application processes, and provided the emotional support and guidance that had helped both children develop into successful young adults. Yet Robert's morning testimony had characterized these contributions as typical parenting activities, rather than recognizing the strategic and intensive support that had enabled our children's achievements. The pattern extended to Robert's treatment of my professional development and career aspirations. Throughout our marriage, I had continued to invest in my own learning and skill development, completing advanced certifications in strategic consulting, attending industry conferences, and building expertise in specialized areas that had enhanced my ability to serve clients effectively. Robert had increasingly viewed these investments as personal indulgences rather than professional development that contributed to our family's financial success. The systematic nature of Robert's minimization had become particularly apparent in how he discussed our marriage and partnership with our children. Over the past several years, both of our children had mentioned conversations with their father, where he had emphasized his role as the family's primary provider while characterizing my contributions as secondary or supportive. These characterizations had created confusion for our children, who had observed firsthand the complexity and importance of my contributions to our family's success. The timing of my recognition of these patterns coincided with my preparation for the divorce proceedings and my work with Catherine to document my contributions to our shared success. The process of systematically reviewing our financial records, business correspondence, and family history had revealed the extent to which Robert's narrative about our partnership had diverged from the reality of our collaborative relationship. The documentation Catherine had prepared would demonstrate this divergence in ways that Robert had not anticipated. The emotional impact of recognizing these patterns extended beyond the immediate concerns of the divorce proceedings. I realized that I had been complicit in allowing Robert's minimization of my contributions to continue and escalate over time. My tendency to avoid conflict and maintain family harmony had prevented me from challenging his increasingly dismissive characterizations of my role in our shared success. This recognition was painful but also empowering, as it helped me understand that the current situation was not just about asset division, but about finally confronting years of systematic devaluation. The pattern recognition also revealed that Robert's morning testimony was not simply a litigation strategy developed for the divorce proceedings, but rather an accurate reflection of how he had come to view our partnership and my contributions. His confidence during the morning session suggested that he genuinely believed the narrative he was presenting, rather than knowingly misrepresenting our relationship for strategic advantage. This realization was both disturbing and clarifying, as it indicated that the afternoon's proceedings would challenge not just his legal position, but his fundamental understanding of our marriage and shared achievements. The documentation that Catherine had prepared would address each aspect of the pattern I was recognizing, providing concrete evidence of contributions that Robert had minimized or forgotten over time. The comprehensive nature of her preparation suggested that she had encountered similar patterns in other cases and understood the importance of systematic documentation in challenging narratives that had become entrenched over years of gradual development. As the lunch recess concluded and we prepared to reconvene for the afternoon session, I felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension about the revelations that would unfold. The pattern recognition had prepared me to understand that Robert's reaction to Catherine's documentation would involve more than simple surprise or embarrassment. It would require him to confront fundamental assumptions about our partnership and his own success that had become central to his identity and self-concept. The afternoon proceedings would reveal whether the evidence Catherine had assembled would be sufficient to challenge the narrative Robert had presented and demonstrate the true extent of my contributions to our shared success. The stakes extended beyond financial considerations to encompass recognition of partnership contributions that had been systematically undervalued and dismissed throughout the gradual deterioration of our marriage. The pattern recognition had transformed my understanding of the morning's proceedings from a dispute over asset division to a confrontation over competing narratives about partnership, contribution, and recognition. The systematic nature of Robert's minimization made the afternoon's revelations more significant, as they would challenge not just his legal position, but the fundamental assumptions that had shaped his understanding of our relationship and his own achievements. The afternoon session began with Catherine Walsh rising from her chair with the measured confidence of an attorney who had spent months preparing for this precise moment. The documentation spread across her section of the conference table represented hundreds of hours of investigation, analysis, and strategic preparation that would fundamentally challenge every assertion Robert had made during his morning testimony. As she organized her materials and prepared to present her case, I could see Robert's initial confidence beginning to waver as he noticed the substantial volume of evidence Catherine had assembled. "Mr. Castellanos?" Catherine began, her voice carrying the authoritative tone that had made her reputation in complex divorce litigation. "Your testimony this morning presented a narrative about your marriage and business success that differs significantly from the documented evidence we have compiled. I would like to review some specific records that paint a very different picture of Mrs. Castellanos' contributions to your shared achievements." The first document Catherine presented was a comprehensive financial analysis that traced the development of Robert's business from its inception through its current status as a $50 million enterprise. The analysis revealed that during the critical first 5 years of Castellanos' development, my consulting income had provided between 60 and 75% of our family's living expenses, allowing Robert to reinvest virtually all of his development profits back into the business rather than using them to support our household operations. Robert's face began to show signs of discomfort as Catherine methodically presented bank statements, tax returns, and financial records that documented the extent of my financial contributions during the period when his business was most vulnerable and required maximum capital investment. The evidence directly contradicted his morning assertion that I had made no significant financial contributions to our marriage or his business success. These records show that Mrs. Castellanos' consulting income totaled over $400,000 during your company's startup phase, Catherine continued, her presentation supported by detailed charts and financial summaries. This income was not used for personal expenses or lifestyle choices, but rather enabled you to reinvest your development profits into property acquisitions and business expansion that formed the foundation of your current success. The financial documentation extended beyond simple income comparisons to include analysis of specific investment decisions and business opportunities that had been made possible by my financial support. Catherine presented evidence showing that 3 of Robert's most profitable early development projects had been funded through reinvestment strategies that were only possible because my consulting income was covering our family's operational expenses during the same period. Robert's attorney attempted to minimize the significance of this financial contribution by characterizing it as temporary support during the early phases of business development. However, Catherine was prepared for this response and presented additional documentation showing that my financial contributions had continued throughout the marriage, including periods when Robert's business faced challenges or required additional capital investment for expansion opportunities. The second major area of evidence Catherine presented focused on my strategic involvement in Robert's business development and decision-making processes. She had compiled email correspondence, meeting notes, and documented conversations that revealed the extent of my advisory role in key business decisions that Robert had characterized as his individual achievements during the morning session. Mrs. Castellanos holds advanced certifications in strategic business consulting and has provided ongoing strategic advice that has been instrumental in many of your most successful projects, Catherine explained, presenting correspondence that showed my involvement in analyzing potential development opportunities, evaluating partnership proposals, and developing strategies for overcoming regulatory and financing challenges. The documentation included specific examples where my strategic recommendations had prevented costly mistakes or identified opportunities that Robert had initially overlooked. One particularly significant example involved a mixed-use development project where my analysis of market conditions and demographic trends had led to design modifications that increased the project's profitability by over $2 million. Robert's morning testimony had claimed full credit for this project's success without mentioning my strategic contributions. Catherine presented additional evidence showing that my consulting expertise had been regularly utilized for Robert's business challenges, including situations where he had formally engaged my services for specific projects related to Castellanos' development. The documented consulting agreements and project reports demonstrated that my involvement had extended far beyond casual advice to include formal strategic analysis and recommendations that had shaped major business decisions. The third area of evidence addressed my role in developing and maintaining the business relationships that had been crucial to Robert's success in commercial real estate development. Catherine had compiled documentation showing my involvement in client entertainment, industry networking events, and relationship maintenance activities that had directly contributed to business development and client retention for Castellanos. Development. Commercial real estate success depends heavily on trust relationships and long-term client connections, Catherine explained, presenting photographs, event records, and correspondence that documented my extensive involvement in business development activities. Mrs. Castellanos has been instrumental in creating and maintaining many of the key relationships that have generated your most successful projects. The relationship documentation included evidence of my role in organizing client entertainment, events, coordinating business development activities, and maintaining ongoing communication with key clients and their families. Catherine presented specific examples where business opportunities had originated through social connections I had developed and maintained, including relationships that had resulted in multi-million-dollar development contracts for Robert's company. The evidence also revealed that several of Robert's most important business partnerships had been initiated through introductions I had facilitated, or relationships I had cultivated over years of strategic networking. Catherine presented correspondence showing that I had often served as the initial point of contact for potential business opportunities, conducting preliminary relationship building that had prepared the ground for Robert's subsequent business Development efforts. The fourth major area of documentation addressed the comprehensive household and family management that had enabled Robert to focus intensively on business development without being distracted by domestic responsibilities. Catherine presented detailed records showing the scope and complexity of the operational support I had provided throughout our marriage. While Mr. Castellanos was building his business, Mrs. Castellanos was managing a complex household operation that included financial planning, property management, educational coordination for 2 children, and social calendar management that supported business development activities, Catherine explained, presenting documentation that revealed the extensive nature of these responsibilities. The household management evidence included financial records showing my responsibility for budgeting, bill paying, and coordination of family finances that had freed Robert from these time-consuming activities. Catherine presented documentation showing that I had managed multiple properties, coordinated maintenance and improvements, and handled administrative responsibilities that would have required significant time and attention if Robert had been responsible for them directly. The educational support documentation was particularly comprehensive, showing my involvement in researching and selecting schools, coordinating with teachers and counselors, managing college application processes, and providing the ongoing support that had enabled both of our children to achieve academic and extracurricular success. Catherine presented evidence showing that this parental involvement had required substantial time and strategic thinking that had been essential to our children's development. The fifth area of evidence addressed my professional development and the growth of my consulting practice, directly challenging Robert's characterization of my work as insignificant hobby activities. Catherine presented client testimonials, project results, and revenue documentation that demonstrated the substantial success and professional recognition my consulting practice had achieved. Mrs. Castellanos has built a strategic consulting practice that serves clients across multiple industries and has generated over $2 million in revenue over the past decade, Catherine explained, presenting documentation that included client success stories, industry recognition, and professional certifications that established my expertise and professional standing. The consulting practice documentation included evidence of my work with clients who had achieved significant success following implementation of strategies I had developed. Catherine presented case studies showing measurable improvements in operational efficiency, revenue growth, and strategic positioning that my clients had achieved through my consulting services. The professional recognition evidence included documentation of speaking engagements, industry publications, and professional association leadership roles that demonstrated my standing within the strategic consulting community. This evidence directly contradicted Robert's characterization of my work as casual or insignificant activities. As Catherine continued her presentation, Robert's demeanor underwent a dramatic transformation from confident dismissal to visible discomfort and growing anxiety. The comprehensive nature of the evidence was clearly beyond what he had anticipated, and the systematic documentation of contributions he had minimized or forgotten was forcing him to confront the reality of our partnership in ways that challenged his fundamental assumptions about his own success. The documentation also revealed the financial impact of my various contributions to our shared success, with Catherine presenting analysis showing that my combined financial, strategic, consulting, and operational contributions had been worth millions of dollars over the course of our marriage. This analysis positioned my contributions as investments in our shared success, rather than support activities that had benefited from Robert's individual achievements. Robert's attorney appeared increasingly uncomfortable as the scope of Catherine's documentation became apparent. The evidence was clearly more comprehensive than they had anticipated, and the systematic nature of the documentation made it difficult to dismiss or minimize through the strategies they had employed during the morning session. The presentation concluded with Catherine summarizing the total value of my contributions to our shared success and presenting a revised assessment of appropriate asset division and support arrangements based on the documented evidence of partnership rather than dependence. This revised proposal reflected recognition of my essential role in building the wealth that Robert had claimed as his individual achievement. The evidence demonstrates that Mrs. Castellanos has been an equal partner in building the success that you have characterized as your individual achievement, Catherine stated, her conclusion supported by the extensive documentation she had presented. Her contributions have been financial, strategic, operational, and professional, and they have been essential to every aspect of the success you now claim as entirely your own. The uncomfortable confrontation had forced Robert to face documentation that systematically challenged every aspect of his morning testimony and revealed the extent to which his narrative about our marriage had diverged from the documented reality of our partnership. The evidence presented a compelling case for recognition of contributions that had been invisible to Robert, but essential to everything we had achieved together. The transformation in Robert's demeanor throughout the afternoon session reflected the emotional impact of confronting evidence that challenged his fundamental understanding of his own success and our relationship. The documentation had not only contradicted his legal position, but had also forced him to recognize the extent to which his achievements had been built on a foundation of partnership and support that he had systematically minimized or forgotten over time. The silence that followed Catherine's comprehensive presentation stretched across the conference room like a heavy curtain, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning system and the distant sounds of downtown Denver traffic filtering through the sealed windows. Robert sat motionless in his chair. His earlier confidence completely evaporated as he processed the magnitude of evidence that had systematically dismantled every assertion he had made during his morning testimony. The documentation spread across Catherine's section of the table represented not just legal evidence, but a mirror reflecting 22 years of partnership that he had either forgotten or deliberately minimized. For the first time since the IIR proceedings had begun, I observed Robert without the emotional filter of hurt or anger that had colored my perceptions throughout our deteriorating marriage. What I saw was a man confronting the uncomfortable reality that his carefully constructed narrative about his individual success had been built on a foundation of systematic denial about the collaborative nature of our achievements. The evidence Catherine had presented had not simply contradicted his legal position, but had challenged the fundamental assumptions that had shaped his identity and self-concept for years. Robert's reaction to the documentation revealed the depth of his genuine belief in the narrative he had presented during the morning session. His visible discomfort and confusion suggested that he had not been deliberately misrepresenting our partnership for strategic advantage, but had actually convinced himself that his success was primarily the result of his individual efforts and capabilities. This recognition was both disturbing and clarifying, as it indicated that our marital problems had been rooted in a fundamental disconnect between his perception of our relationship and the documented reality of our collaborative partnership. The transformation in Robert's demeanor throughout Catherine's presentation had been gradual but unmistakable. His initial defensive posture had given way to uncomfortable recognition as the financial evidence had demonstrated my substantial contributions during his company's critical development phases. The strategic consulting documentation had produced visible surprise as he was confronted with evidence of advice and recommendations that had shaped his most successful business decisions. The relationship development evidence had clearly been the most shocking, as it revealed the extent to which his business success had depended on social connections and networking activities that he had apparently taken for granted. Thomas Brennan, Robert's attorney, appeared equally unsettled by the scope and quality of evidence Catherine had presented. His aggressive litigation style, which had been effective during the morning session when the narrative had favored his client, seemed inadequate for responding to the comprehensive documentation that challenged every aspect of their case. The evidence was too detailed and systematic to dismiss through the minimization strategies that had characterized Robert's testimony. As the afternoon session continued, I found myself experiencing an unexpected sense of clarity about our marriage and the gradual deterioration that had led to our current situation. The evidence Catherine had assembled provided objective validation of contributions that I had begun to doubt during the years when Robert's dismissive attitude had intensified. Seeing the documented proof of my financial, strategic, and operational contributions helped me understand that my feelings of being undervalued and unrecognized had been based on legitimate concerns rather than personal insecurities or unrealistic expectations. The clarity extended beyond simple validation of my contributions to encompass a deeper understanding of how successful partnerships function and the importance of mutual recognition and appreciation. The evidence revealed that our marriage had been most effective when we had functioned as genuine collaborators, with each partner contributing different but equally valuable capabilities toward shared objectives. The problems had developed as Robert had gradually shifted from viewing me as a partner to seeing me as a beneficiary of his individual success. Catherine's presentation had also illuminated patterns in my own behavior that had contributed to the development of our current situation. My tendency to avoid conflict and maintain family harmony had prevented me from challenging Robert's increasingly dismissive characterizations of my contributions. I had allowed his narrative about my secondary role to develop and solidify over time, partly because confronting these characterizations would have required difficult conversations that I had preferred to avoid. The recognition of my own role in enabling Robert's misconceptions was uncomfortable, but ultimately empowering. It helped me understand that the current confrontation was not simply about asset division or legal positioning, but represented an opportunity to address fundamental communication and recognition issues that had been building throughout our marriage. The documentation Catherine had prepared provided the foundation for having conversations about partnership and contribution that we had been avoiding for years. The financial evidence had been particularly revealing in demonstrating how my contributions had evolved throughout different phases of our marriage and Robert's business development. During the early years, my consulting income had provided crucial financial stability that had enabled his business investment strategies. As his company had grown and become more profitable, my contributions had shifted toward strategic advisory work and business relationship development that had supported his continued success. Throughout both phases, my household and family management had provided the operational foundation that had allowed him to focus intensively on business development activities. The evolution of my contributions had paralleled the changing needs of our family and Robert's business, demonstrating an adaptive partnership approach that had consistently prioritized our shared success over individual recognition or career advancement. This pattern revealed that my professional choices had been strategic decisions designed to optimize our combined effectiveness rather than personal preferences for part-time or secondary career activities. The strategic consulting evidence had demonstrated the sophistication and professional value of advice I had provided throughout Robert's business development. The documented correspondence and project analyses revealed strategic thinking capabilities that extended far beyond casual suggestions or supportive encouragement. My recommendations had addressed complex business challenges involving market analysis, competitive positioning, regulatory compliance, and operational optimization that required specialized expertise and analytical capabilities. The professional recognition documentation had been equally important in establishing the credibility and market value of my consulting practice. The client testimonials, project results, and industry recognition provided objective validation of my professional capabilities and the success I had achieved in building my own business, while simultaneously supporting Robert's development activities. This evidence directly contradicted his characterizations of my work as hobby activities or casual consulting arrangements. The relationship development evidence had revealed perhaps the most significant aspect of my contributions that Robert had failed to recognize or appreciate. The documentation showed that many of his most important business relationships had originated through social connections I had cultivated and maintained over years of strategic networking. The trust and personal connections that had made major development deals possible had often been built through patient relationship building that occurred outside of formal business contexts. The scope of my relationship development contributions extended beyond simple networking to include ongoing relationship maintenance that had supported client retention and repeat business opportunities. The evidence showed that I had often served as the primary point of contact for maintaining relationships with clients' families and managing the social aspects of business relationships that were crucial for long-term success in commercial real estate development. As I processed the implications of Catherine's presentation, I began to understand that the afternoon's proceedings represented more than vindication of my contributions to our shared success. They provided a framework for understanding how collaborative partnerships function most effectively, and the importance of recognizing and appreciating different types of contributions that support shared objectives. The evidence had demonstrated that successful business development requires a complex combination of technical expertise, strategic thinking, relationship building, operational management, and financial planning that rarely exists within a single individual. Our partnership had been most effective when we had functioned as a complementary team, with each partner contributing specialized capabilities that enhanced our overall effectiveness. The gradual breakdown of our marriage could be understood as the result of Robert's increasing focus on individual achievement and recognition at the expense of partnership awareness and appreciation. As his business success had grown, he had begun to minimize contributions that were not directly tied to revenue generation or deal-making, creating a dynamic where my various forms of support became invisible or unimportant. The clarity I was experiencing extended to understanding my own career and professional development choices throughout our marriage. Rather than viewing my consulting practice as a secondary activity that had been constrained by family responsibilities, I began to recognize it as a strategic choice that had allowed me to maintain professional engagement while providing the flexibility necessary to support our family's changing needs and Robert's business development requirements. The afternoon's revelations had also provided insight into the broader challenges that many professional partnerships face as individual careers develop and evolve over time. The evidence suggested that maintaining effective collaboration requires ongoing communication about contributions, regular recognition of different types of value creation, and conscious effort to prevent individual success from overshadowing partnership dynamics. Robert's reaction to the documentation continued to evolve throughout the afternoon session, shifting from defensive surprise to what appeared to be genuine recognition of contributions he had forgotten or minimized. His occasional comments and questions suggested that he was beginning to remember specific instances where my advice or support had been crucial to his success, but that these memories had been overshadowed by his focus on individual achievement and recognition. The transformation in the conference room atmosphere was palpable as the implications of Catherine's evidence became clear to all participants. The morning's proceedings had been characterized by confident assertions and dismissive characterizations that had positioned our divorce as a straightforward division of assets between a successful entrepreneur and a dependent spouse. The afternoon's documentation had revealed a complex partnership where both parties had made essential contributions to shared success that could not be easily categorized or divided. Thomas Brennan's attempts to minimize or challenge Catherine's evidence had been largely ineffective, partly because the documentation was too comprehensive and systematic to dismiss, but also because Robert's own reactions had validated many of the contributions that were being documented. His surprise and recognition suggested that the evidence was accurately reflecting our partnership dynamics rather than presenting a misleading or exaggerated narrative. As the afternoon session continued toward its conclusion, I found myself feeling a sense of resolution and empowerment that had been absent throughout the deterioration of our marriage and the early phases of the divorce proceedings. The systematic validation of my contributions had provided the objective recognition that Robert's dismissive attitude had denied, while also clarifying my own understanding of the value I had created throughout our partnership. The moment of clarity encompassed not just recognition of past contributions, but also confidence about my capability to create value and achieve success independently. The evidence Catherine had presented demonstrated that my professional skills, strategic thinking abilities, and relationship-building capabilities were substantial assets that would support my future success, regardless of the outcome of the divorce proceedings. The documentation had transformed the conference room confrontation from a dispute over asset division into a comprehensive examination of partnership dynamics and contribution recognition that provided valuable insights for both Robert and myself about the collaborative foundations of our shared success. The uncomfortable truths that had been revealed created the possibility for more honest and productive discussions about our future relationship as former partners and co-parents of our children. The period following Catherine's comprehensive evidence presentation marked a fundamental shift in the divorce proceedings, transforming what had begun as Robert's confident assertion of minimal contribution into a complex negotiation between two parties who were finally confronting the documented reality of their 22-year partnership. The systematic evidence had created an entirely new foundation for discussions about asset division, support arrangements, and future responsibilities that required careful strategic thinking and sophisticated legal positioning. Catherine's immediate response to the afternoon's revelations demonstrated the strategic thinking that had made her reputation in complex divorce litigation. Rather than simply presenting the evidence and waiting for Robert's team to respond, she began developing a comprehensive strategy that would leverage the documentation to achieve optimal outcomes for my financial security and professional future. Her approach reflected deep understanding of how high-asset divorces unfold when one party's narrative is systematically challenged by overwhelming evidence. The strategic response began with Catherine's careful analysis of how the evidence would affect various aspects of our divorce settlement, including property division, spousal support calculations, business valuation methodologies, and custody arrangements. The documentation had established that our marriage had functioned as a genuine business partnership where both parties had made essential contributions to wealth accumulation and business success. This partnership framework required fundamentally different approaches to asset division than the dependent spouse narrative Robert had attempted to establish. Catherine's evaluation of the property division implications was particularly sophisticated, as she recognized that the evidence provided foundation for claiming partnership interest in assets that Robert had characterized as his individual achievements. The commercial properties owned by Castellanos Development had been acquired and developed using strategies that incorporated my financial contributions, strategic advice, and relationship development work. The documentation supported treating these assets as marital property subject to equitable division rather than Robert's separate business assets. The business valuation considerations became more complex as Catherine analyzed how my contributions had affected the overall value of Robert's development company. The evidence demonstrated that my strategic consulting work, relationship development activities, and operational support had been integral to the company's growth and current market position. This integral contribution pattern supported higher valuation of my partnership interest and potentially greater share of business assets than traditional spousal support arrangements would provide. Catherine's approach to spousal support calculations reflected the strategic implications of the evidence that had been presented. Rather than negotiating for traditional support payments based on lifestyle maintenance, she began developing arguments for lump sum settlements that would reflect the full value of my contributions to our shared wealth accumulation. This approach would provide greater financial security and independence while acknowledging the partnership nature of our marriage. The strategic response also addressed the broader implications of the evidence for my professional reputation and future business development opportunities. The systematic documentation of my consulting expertise, client success stories, and professional recognition provided foundation for positioning my consulting practice as a valuable asset with significant growth potential. Catherine recognized that protecting and enhancing my professional standing would be crucial for my long-term financial independence and career success. Catherine's communication strategy became essential as news of the divorce proceedings and the dramatic evidence presentation began circulating within Denver's professional and social networks. The business community's reaction to revelations about my extensive contributions to Robert's success could significantly affect both my consulting practice and Robert's business relationships. Catherine developed messaging approaches that would protect my professional reputation while avoiding inflammatory characterizations that could complicate settlement negotiations. The timing considerations for Catherine's strategic response reflected her understanding of how momentum and positioning affect divorce negotiations. The evidence presentation had created a significant advantage that needed to be leveraged quickly, before Robert's team could develop counterarguments or alternative narratives. Catherine began preparing comprehensive settlement proposals that would capitalize on the strength of our position while the evidence remained fresh and compelling. Catherine's analysis of Robert's likely responses to the evidence guided her strategic planning for subsequent negotiations. She anticipated that Robert would experience a period of shock and denial as he processed the implications of the documentation, followed by attempts to minimize the significance of my contributions or characterize them as supportive rather than essential. Catherine prepared responses to these predictable arguments while developing alternative approaches for different negotiation scenarios. The financial analysis supporting Catherine's strategic response involved sophisticated modeling of different settlement structures and their long-term implications for my financial security. She evaluated the relative advantages of property division, lump sum payments, ongoing support arrangements, and business partnership structures that would reflect the true nature of our collaborative relationship. This analysis provided foundation for making strategic decisions about which settlement approaches would best serve my interests. Catherine's evaluation of the tax implications of different settlement structures revealed additional considerations that would affect the net value of various arrangements. The documentation of my business contributions provided opportunities for structuring settlements that would minimize tax consequences while maximizing financial benefits. Catherine worked with tax specialists to develop strategies that would optimize the financial outcomes of property transfers and support arrangements. The strategic response included careful consideration of how custody arrangements would be affected by the evidence that had been presented. The documentation of my extensive involvement in our children's education and development supported maintaining primary custody arrangements while ensuring that Robert's relationship with the children would not be unnecessarily complicated by the business partnership revelations. Catherine developed approaches that would protect our children from the emotional impact of the divorce proceedings, while ensuring their continued relationship with both parents. Catherine's approach to media and public relations considerations reflected her understanding of how high-asset divorces can affect professional reputations and business relationships. The evidence of my contributions to Robert's success was inherently newsworthy within Denver's business community, but premature or inflammatory publicity could complicate negotiations and damage relationships that would be important for both parties' future success. Catherine developed strategies for managing information disclosure that would protect both parties while maintaining negotiating advantages. The strategic response addressed potential challenges from Robert's business partners and investors who might be concerned about how the divorce proceedings could affect Castellanos Development's operations and financial stability. Catherine prepared communications that would reassure business stakeholders about continuity, while positioning my consulting relationship with the company as an asset rather than a complication. This approach protected both Robert's business interests and my professional relationship with the company. Catherine's evaluation of alternative dispute resolution options reflected her strategic assessment of how the evidence would affect our negotiating position in different forums. The comprehensive documentation provided strong foundation for litigation if settlement negotiations were unsuccessful, but mediation or collaborative divorce approaches might provide more flexible solutions that could address the complex partnership issues that had been revealed. Catherine prepared strategies for multiple resolution pathways while maintaining maximum flexibility. The strategic response included development of specific negotiation objectives that would reflect the full value of my contributions, while providing realistic pathways to resolution. Catherine established minimum acceptable outcomes for property, division, financial support, and professional recognition while identifying areas where compromise might be appropriate to achieve overall settlement objectives. This structured approach provided clear guidance for complex negotiations. Catherine's analysis of the broader precedent implications of our case revealed strategic opportunities for establishing favorable legal standards for recognizing business partnership contributions in divorce proceedings. The systematic documentation we had developed could provide foundation for legal arguments that would benefit other professionals facing similar situations. Catherine recognized that achieving successful outcomes in our case could have positive implications beyond our immediate circumstances. The strategic response addressed the emotional and psychological dimensions of the divorce process that could affect negotiation, effectiveness, and long-term relationship dynamics. Catherine understood that Robert's reaction to the evidence would involve significant psychological adjustment as he processed the implications for his self-concept and professional identity. She developed approaches that would allow him to accept settlement terms while maintaining dignity and professional standing. Catherine's preparation for subsequent negotiations involved developing multiple tactical approaches for different scenarios and stakeholder reactions. She prepared comprehensive responses to predictable counter-arguments while maintaining flexibility for unexpected developments or negotiation opportunities. This thorough preparation reflected her understanding that successful high-asset divorce negotiations require adaptability combined with strategic consistency. The strategic response concluded with Catherine's establishment of clear timelines and milestones for achieving settlement objectives while maintaining momentum from the evidence presentation. She recognized that the advantage created by the documentation needed to be converted into concrete settlement terms within a reasonable time frame to prevent erosion of our negotiating position. Catherine developed implementation strategies that would maintain pressure for resolution while providing sufficient time for thoughtful negotiation. The comprehensive nature of Catherine's strategic response reflected her recognition that the evidence presentation had fundamentally altered the dynamics of our divorce proceedings. The documentation had created opportunities for achieving outcomes that would provide genuine recognition of my partnership contributions, while ensuring financial security and professional independence for my future. Catherine's sophisticated approach to leveraging these opportunities demonstrated the importance of strategic thinking in complex legal situations, where evidence can dramatically shift negotiating positions and settlement possibilities. The strategic response represented more than legal positioning. It embodied a comprehensive approach to transforming documented evidence into practical outcomes that would serve my long-term interests, while acknowledging the collaborative nature of our marriage and shared achievements. Catherine's methodical development of this strategy provided confidence that the uncomfortable confrontation of the afternoon's evidence presentation would be converted into concrete benefits that would support my future success and independence. The weeks following the evidence presentation marked a critical period where the professional and personal networks I had carefully cultivated throughout my marriage would prove their true value in ways I had never anticipated. The systematic documentation of my contributions had established a strong legal foundation for the divorce proceedings, but transforming that evidence into practical outcomes required strategic activation of relationships that had been built through years of genuine collaboration and mutual support. Catherine Walsh recognized immediately that the success of our strategic response would depend significantly on how key stakeholders within Denver's business and professional communities reacted to the revelations about my extensive contributions to Robert's success. The evidence had created an opportunity to reshape perceptions about my professional capabilities and business acumen. But capitalizing on this opportunity required careful coordination with individuals who could influence both public opinion and potential business relationships. The first phase of network activation involved reaching out to professional colleagues within the strategic consulting community who had observed my work over the past decade and could provide credible testimony about my expertise and achievements. Catherine understood that independent validation from respected professionals would be crucial for countering any attempts by Robert's team to minimize the significance of my consulting practice or characterize my business success as dependent on his financial support. Dr. Margaret Chen, a senior partner at Denver Strategic Advisors and former president of the Colorado Association of Management Consultants, had worked with me on several complex client engagements over the past 5 years. Her response to learning about the divorce proceedings and the evidence that had been presented was both supportive and strategically valuable. Margaret had direct knowledge of my analytical capabilities, strategic thinking skills, and client relationship management effectiveness that provided powerful independent corroboration of the professional competencies documented in Catherine's evidence. Margaret's willingness to provide professional references and potential testimony reflected the genuine respect I had earned within the consulting community through years of delivering exceptional results for challenging client engagements. Her validation carried particular weight because she had no personal relationship with Robert and no financial interest in our divorce proceedings. Her assessment of my professional capabilities was based entirely on direct observation of my work performance and client outcomes. The activation of my professional network extended beyond individual relationships to include institutional connections that could provide ongoing support for my consulting practice during and after the divorce proceedings. The Colorado Association of Management Consultants, where I had served on the education committee for 3 years, offered to feature my expertise in their upcoming industry publication and invited me to present at their annual conference. These opportunities provided platforms for maintaining professional visibility while the divorce proceedings continued. Professional association leadership had observed my contributions to industry education and professional development initiatives over several years. Their support reflected recognition of expertise and leadership capabilities that extended beyond my individual consulting practice to encompass broader contributions to professional community development. This institutional validation provided additional credibility for the business partnership claims that Catherine had established through her evidence presentation. The second phase of network activation focused on clients and former clients who had benefited from my strategic consulting services and could provide testimonials about the business value I had created through my professional work. Catherine recognized that client success stories would be particularly powerful for demonstrating the market value of my consulting expertise and countering any characterizations of my work as casual or non-professional activities. Jennifer Walsh, the founder and CEO of Rocky Mountain Technologies, had engaged my consulting services 3 years earlier when her software development company was facing significant operational challenges and competitive pressures. The strategic repositioning recommendations I had developed had helped her company achieve a 40% increase in revenue while reducing operational costs by 25%. Jennifer's willingness to document these results and speak publicly about my contributions provided compelling evidence of my professional impact and market value. The client testimonials revealed patterns of strategic thinking and implementation, effectiveness that distinguished my consulting approach from typical business advisory services. Clients consistently emphasized my ability to analyze complex business situations, develop innovative solutions, and provide ongoing support for successful implementation. These testimonials provided objective validation of capabilities that Robert had dismissed as insignificant hobby activities. Additional client relationships provided geographic and industry diversity that demonstrated the broad applicability of my consulting expertise. Clients in healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, and technology sectors had achieved measurable improvements through implementation of strategies I had developed. This diversity of successful engagements supported positioning my consulting practice as a significant professional achievement rather than a casual business activity. The third phase of network activation involved engaging with social and community connections that had observed my relationship with Robert and could provide perspective on the collaborative nature of our partnership. These relationships were particularly important for countering any narrative that might emerge about my claims of partnership contributions being exaggerated or retrospectively constructed for divorce proceedings. Susan Morrison, a longtime friend who had observed our marriage development over 15 years, had frequently witnessed my strategic involvement in Robert's business challenges and opportunities. Her perspective was valuable because she had no professional interest in the consulting industry, but had observed the collaborative dynamics of our relationship through social interactions and family gatherings. Susan's observations provided credible testimony about my ongoing involvement in business discussions and strategic planning activities. Community leadership roles I had undertaken over the years provided additional sources of character references and professional validation. Service on the board of directors for the Denver Children's Hospital Foundation had demonstrated strategic thinking capabilities and leadership effectiveness in nonprofit organizational contexts. Board colleagues had observed my analytical approach to complex organizational challenges and my ability to develop effective solutions for resource allocation and strategic positioning issues. The nonprofit leadership experience had also provided opportunities to develop relationships with other business leaders and community influencers who could speak to my professional competencies from direct observation. These relationships were particularly valuable because they were based on volunteer service rather than business transactions, providing credible testimony about my motivations and capabilities. The fourth phase of network activation addressed relationships within Robert's business community that could provide perspective on my contributions to his success while maintaining professional neutrality about our divorce proceedings. These relationships required careful management because they involved individuals who had ongoing business relationships with Robert, but had also benefited from my relationship development and networking activities. Marcus Rodriguez, a commercial real estate broker who had collaborated with Robert on several development projects, had experienced firsthand my involvement in client relationship management and business development activities. His professional relationship with Robert created potential conflicts, but his direct observation of my contributions to successful business outcomes provided valuable independent validation of my partnership claims. The business community relationships required delicate navigation because they involved individuals who needed to maintain productive working relationships with Robert while potentially providing testimony about my contributions to his success. Catherine developed approaches for engaging these relationships that would provide necessary validation without creating unnecessary professional complications for the individuals involved. Industry event participation over the years had created relationships with professionals throughout the commercial real estate and business development communities who had observed my knowledge and capabilities in various contexts. These relationships provided opportunities for informal validation of my professional competencies and business acumen that supported the documented evidence Catherine had presented. The fifth phase of network activation focused on professional mentorship relationships that could provide guidance and support for my career development during and after the divorce proceedings. These relationships were important for maintaining confidence and strategic direction while navigating the emotional and practical challenges of divorce litigation. Patricia Morrison, a senior executive who had served as an informal mentor throughout my consulting practice development, provided both emotional support and strategic advice about positioning my practice for growth following the divorce settlement. Her experience navigating complex business challenges as a female executive provided valuable perspective on managing professional transitions while maintaining credibility and momentum. Mentorship relationships also provided access to broader professional networks that could support business development opportunities for my consulting practice. Mentor introductions to potential clients and strategic partners provided pathways for expanding my business relationships beyond the networks that had been shared with Robert during our marriage. The network activation process revealed the substantial social capital I had accumulated through years of genuine relationship building and professional service. These relationships provided more than testimonial support for divorce proceedings. They represented ongoing resources for professional development and business growth that would support my independence and success following the marriage dissolution. Professional network activation also demonstrated the strategic value of authentic, relationship-building approaches that had characterized my business development activities throughout my career. The willingness of colleagues, clients, and community leaders to provide support reflected genuine respect for my capabilities and appreciation for value I had created through our professional interactions. The comprehensive nature of network activation provided Catherine with multiple sources of independent validation for the contributions documented in her evidence presentation. These relationships supported the legal case while also providing foundation for continued professional success and business development following the divorce settlement. The network activation process reinforced my confidence in the value I had created through my professional work and relationship-building activities over the past decade. The enthusiastic support from colleagues and clients provided emotional validation that complemented the legal validation Catherine had achieved through her systematic documentation of my contributions to our shared success. The strategic coordination of network activation with legal proceedings demonstrated the importance of managing multiple dimensions of complex life transitions. Professional relationships, legal positioning, and personal development needed to be coordinated to achieve optimal outcomes that would support both immediate settlement objectives and long-term career success. The network activation phase established foundation for continued professional growth and business development that would extend beyond the divorce proceedings to support independent success in the strategic consulting field. The relationships and credibility developed through this process would provide ongoing resources for career advancement and business expansion in the years following the marriage dissolution. The period between the evidence presentation and formal settlement negotiations provided an unexpected opportunity to demonstrate the professional capabilities and strategic thinking skills that Catherine's documentation had established on paper. Rather than simply waiting for the legal process to unfold, I recognized that actively showcasing my expertise through real-world applications would strengthen my position while building momentum for my independent consulting practice. The first major opportunity emerged through my existing client relationship with Pinnacle Healthcare Solutions, a mid-sized medical device distributor that had been struggling with operational inefficiencies and market positioning challenges. The company's president, David Chen, had initially engaged my services 6 months earlier to address inventory management issues, but the scope of the engagement had expanded as we identified broader strategic challenges affecting the company's competitive position and growth potential. The timing of Pinnacle Healthcare's most critical strategic decision coincided perfectly with the divorce proceedings, creating an opportunity to demonstrate my consulting capabilities under high-stakes conditions while generating measurable business results that would validate the professional competencies documented in Catherine's evidence. The company faced a make-or-break decision about whether to pursue an aggressive expansion strategy or focus on optimizing their existing operations in response to increased competitive pressure from larger distributors. My analysis of Pinnacle Healthcare's situation required comprehensive evaluation of market conditions, competitive dynamics, financial capabilities, and operational readiness that drew upon all the strategic thinking skills I had developed over the past decade. The complexity of the engagement demanded sophisticated analytical frameworks, creative problem-solving approaches, and clear communication strategies that would enable the client's leadership team to make informed decisions with confidence. The strategic analysis began with detailed market research that revealed significant shifts in the medical device distribution industry that were creating both threats and opportunities for mid-sized companies like Pinnacle Healthcare. Consolidation trends were increasing competitive pressure from larger distributors, but regulatory changes were also creating market niches where specialized expertise could command premium pricing and customer loyalty. The competitive analysis required sophisticated understanding of industry dynamics and customer decision-making patterns that extended far beyond basic market research. I developed comprehensive profiles of key competitors, analyzed their strategic positioning and resource capabilities, and identified potential vulnerabilities that Pinnacle Healthcare could exploit through targeted strategic initiatives. The financial modeling component of the analysis demanded advanced analytical skills and business acumen that demonstrated my ability to translate strategic concepts into quantifiable business metrics. I developed detailed financial projections for both expansion and optimization scenarios, including sensitivity analyses that evaluated how different assumptions about market conditions and competitive responses would affect potential outcomes. The operational assessment required systematic evaluation of Pinnacle Healthcare's internal capabilities and readiness for different strategic directions. This analysis involved detailed review of organizational structure, process effectiveness, technology systems, and human resource capabilities that would determine the company's ability to execute various strategic alternatives successfully. The strategic recommendations I developed for Pinnacle Healthcare reflected sophisticated understanding of how companies can create sustainable competitive advantages through careful positioning and resource allocation. Rather than recommending either pure expansion or pure optimization, I identified a hybrid strategy that would allow the company to pursue selective growth opportunities while strengthening their operational foundation for long-term success. The implementation plan I developed demonstrated my ability to translate strategic analysis into practical action steps that could be executed by the client's management team. The plan included detailed timelines, resource requirements, risk, mitigation strategies, and performance metrics that would enable effective monitoring and adjustment of strategic initiatives as they were implemented. The presentation of my recommendations to Pinnacle Healthcare's Board of Directors provided an opportunity to demonstrate the communication and persuasion skills that had been crucial to my success throughout my consulting career. The presentation needed to convey complex strategic concepts in clear, compelling terms while building confidence in the recommended approach and my ability to support successful implementation. The board's enthusiastic acceptance of my recommendations and their decision to engage my services for implementation support provided powerful validation of my professional capabilities at a time when Robert was attempting to minimize my business achievements. The client's willingness to make significant strategic commitments based on my analysis and recommendations demonstrated the market value of my consulting expertise. The second major opportunity to demonstrate my capabilities emerged through a new client engagement with Colorado Springs Manufacturing, a family-owned precision machining company that was facing succession planning challenges combined with operational modernization needs. The engagement required sophisticated understanding of family business dynamics, manufacturing operations, and strategic planning methodologies that would test my ability to address complex, multidimensional business challenges. The succession planning component of the engagement required sensitivity to family relationships and emotional considerations while maintaining focus on business objectives and long-term sustainability. The founding family members had different perspectives on leadership transition, ownership structure, and strategic direction that needed to be addressed through careful facilitation and structured decision-making processes. The operational modernization analysis required technical understanding of manufacturing processes and equipment capabilities, combined with strategic thinking about market positioning and competitive differentiation. The company needed to invest in new technology and process improvements while maintaining profitability during the transition period. My approach to the Colorado Springs manufacturing engagement demonstrated my ability to manage complex stakeholder relationships while developing practical solutions for challenging business problems. The engagement required regular communication with multiple family members, key employees, and external advisors while maintaining confidentiality and building consensus around difficult decisions. The strategic plan I developed for Colorado Springs Manufacturing addressed both immediate operational needs and long-term succession objectives through an integrated approach that would enable sustainable growth while preparing for leadership transition. The plan included specific recommendations for technology investments, process improvements, management development, and ownership restructuring that would support the family's objectives. The successful completion of the Colorado Springs Manufacturing Engagement provided additional evidence of my ability to create significant value for clients facing complex strategic challenges. The family's satisfaction with my work and their willingness to recommend my services to other business owners demonstrated the reputation for excellence I had built within the Colorado business community. The third demonstration opportunity came through my involvement in a pro bono consulting engagement with the Denver Economic Development Partnership, a public-private collaboration focused on attracting and supporting business growth in the metropolitan area. The engagement provided an opportunity to showcase my capabilities in a high-visibility community context, while contributing to economic development initiatives that would benefit the broader business community. The Denver Economic Development Partnership engagement required analysis of regional competitive advantages, identification of target industry sectors, and development of marketing strategies that would position Denver effectively in competition with other metropolitan areas for business attraction and expansion opportunities. The scope of the engagement demanded comprehensive understanding of economic development principles and marketing strategy development. My analysis of Denver's competitive position required extensive research into regional economic trends, industry cluster development patterns, and comparative advantages relative to other metropolitan areas in the western United States. The analysis needed to identify specific opportunities where Denver could leverage its unique assets to attract businesses and investment capital. The strategic recommendations I developed for the Denver Economic Development Partnership included targeted marketing campaigns, infrastructure development priorities, and policy initiatives that would enhance the region's attractiveness to specific industry sectors. The recommendations were based on rigorous analysis of market opportunities and competitive dynamics. The presentation of my recommendations to the partnership's board of directors, which included several prominent Denver business leaders, provided high-visibility demonstration of my strategic thinking capabilities and communication effectiveness. The positive reception of my work enhanced my professional reputation within the Denver business community while contributing to important economic development initiatives. The fourth demonstration opportunity emerged through my selection to lead a strategic planning initiative for the Colorado Association of Management Consultants, the professional organization where I had served in various volunteer capacities. Over the past 5 years, the engagement provided an opportunity to demonstrate my capabilities to peer professionals while contributing to the advancement of the consulting profession in Colorado. The strategic planning engagement for the Colorado Association of Management Consultants required sophisticated understanding of professional association management, membership development strategies, and industry positioning considerations. The organization needed to address changing market conditions, evolving member needs, and competitive pressures from national consulting associations. My approach to the strategic planning process demonstrated my ability to facilitate complex group decision-making while maintaining focus on strategic objectives and practical implementation considerations. The process involved multiple stakeholder groups with different perspectives on organizational priorities and resource allocation decisions. The strategic plan I developed for the Colorado Association of Management Consultants included specific recommendations for membership development, educational programming, industry advocacy, and organizational governance that would strengthen the association's value proposition and financial sustainability. The plan reflected comprehensive understanding of professional association dynamics and strategic positioning principles. The successful completion of the strategic planning engagement and the positive response from association members provided professional validation from my consulting peers at a time when my expertise was being questioned in the divorce proceedings. The engagement demonstrated my leadership capabilities and strategic thinking skills to individuals who understood the complexity of consulting work. The cumulative impact of these demonstration opportunities created powerful momentum for my independent consulting practice, while providing concrete evidence of the professional capabilities that Catherine had documented in her legal presentation. The client results and professional recognition I achieved during this period validated my ability to create significant business value through strategic consulting services. The demonstration period also revealed the substantial market demand for my consulting expertise and the potential for significant business growth following the divorce settlement. Clients were actively seeking my services for complex strategic challenges, and referral opportunities were creating a pipeline of potential engagements that would support expanded practice development. The professional recognition I received during this period included invitations to speak at industry conferences, requests for thought leadership articles, and consideration for board positions with professional organizations. These opportunities reflected the reputation for excellence I had built through years of successful client work and professional service. The skill demonstration period provided objective validation of my professional capabilities while building confidence in my ability to achieve continued success as an independent consulting professional. The measurable business results I created for clients during this challenging personal period demonstrated resilience and professional competence that would serve me well in the years following the divorce settlement. The demonstration opportunities also provided practical experience in managing complex professional responsibilities while navigating personal challenges and legal proceedings. The ability to maintain high performance standards and client satisfaction during this difficult period validated my capacity for sustained professional excellence under pressure. The culmination of months of strategic preparation, evidence gathering, and professional demonstration arrived in the form of a high-stakes mediation session that would determine whether the comprehensive documentation of my contributions could be translated into a settlement agreement that reflected the true nature of our 22-year partnership. The mediation represented the ultimate test of Catherine's legal strategy and my professional credibility, with outcomes that would affect not only my financial future, but also the broader recognition of partnership contributions in high-asset divorce proceedings. The mediation session was scheduled to take place at the offices of Denver Mediation Associates, a neutral venue that would provide the professional environment necessary for complex financial negotiations while removing the adversarial atmosphere that had characterized the initial court proceedings. The selection of Dr. Elizabeth Morrison as our mediator reflected both parties' recognition that the case required someone with extensive experience in business partnership disputes and sophisticated understanding of professional contribution valuation. Dr. Morrison's background as both a practicing attorney and business valuation expert provided the technical expertise necessary to evaluate the complex evidence Catherine had assembled while maintaining the neutrality essential for effective mediation. Her reputation for facilitating successful resolutions in high-asset divorce cases involving business partnerships had made her the preferred choice for cases where traditional asset division approaches were insufficient to address the complexity of marital contributions. The preparation for mediation required Catherine and me to distill months of evidence gathering and strategic analysis into clear, compelling presentations that would enable Dr. Morrison to understand the full scope of my contributions while providing foundation for productive settlement negotiations. The complexity of our case demanded careful organization of evidence and strategic sequencing of arguments that would build understanding progressively rather than overwhelming the mediation process with excessive detail. Catherine's approach to mediation preparation reflected her understanding that successful outcomes required more than simply presenting evidence of my contributions. The mediation needed to address Robert's emotional and psychological adjustment to recognizing partnership contributions he had minimized or forgotten, while providing him with pathways to accept settlement terms that acknowledged my role in our shared success without devastating his professional identity or business relationships. The opening session of mediation began with Dr. Morrison establishing ground rules for productive discussion and explaining her approach to evaluating complex partnership contribution claims. Her framework for analysis included systematic review of financial contributions, strategic advisory value, relationship development impact, operational support significance, and professional achievement recognition that would provide comprehensive assessment of my partnership role. Robert's demeanor during the opening session reflected the months of processing he had undergone since Catherine's initial evidence presentation. The shock and defensive denial that had characterized his initial reaction had evolved into reluctant recognition of contributions he could no longer dismiss or minimize. His participation in mediation represented acknowledgement that the evidence had fundamentally altered the dynamics of our divorce proceedings. The first substantive session focused on financial contribution analysis, with Catherine presenting detailed documentation of how my consulting income had supported our family's financial foundation during critical periods of Robert's business development. The evidence demonstrated that my earnings had provided stability and flexibility that enabled strategic reinvestment decisions crucial to Castellanos Development's growth and market positioning. Dr. Morrison's analysis of the financial evidence revealed patterns of contribution that extended beyond simple income comparison to encompass strategic financial planning and resource allocation decisions that had optimized our combined economic effectiveness. The mediation process provided opportunity for detailed examination of how my financial contributions had created value that exceeded their nominal amounts through timing and strategic application. The financial analysis also addressed the opportunity costs associated with my career choices throughout our marriage, including the potential income and professional advancement I had foregone to provide operational support that enabled Robert's business development focus. Dr. Morrison's evaluation framework included assessment of these opportunity costs as legitimate partnership contributions that should be reflected in settlement calculations. The second major session addressed my strategic consulting contributions to Robert's business success, with detailed review of documented advice and recommendations that had shaped major business decisions throughout Castellanos Development's growth trajectory. The evidence included specific examples where my strategic analysis had prevented costly mistakes, identified profitable opportunities, or guided successful navigation of complex business challenges. Dr. Morrison's evaluation of the strategic consulting evidence involved systematic analysis of the business value created through my advisory contributions, including quantifiable impacts on project outcomes, operational efficiency improvements, and strategic positioning advantages that had enhanced the company's competitive position and financial performance. The mediation process provided framework for translating strategic contributions into monetary values that could be incorporated into settlement calculations. The strategic consulting analysis also addressed the professional expertise and analytical capabilities I had contributed to Robert's business development, including advanced training and certification credentials that had enhanced the quality and effectiveness of my advisory contributions. The mediation process recognized these professional qualifications as assets that had created measurable value for our shared business interests. The third session focused on relationship development contributions, addressing my role in building and maintaining the business relationships that had been crucial to Robert's success in commercial real estate development. The evidence demonstrated that many of his most important client relationships and business partnerships had originated through social connections I had cultivated and maintained over years of strategic networking activities. Dr. Morrison's analysis of relationship development contributions required sophisticated understanding of how business relationships develop and are maintained in the commercial real estate industry, where personal trust and long-term connections often determine access to opportunities and successful project outcomes. The mediation process provided framework for evaluating these relationship contributions as legitimate business assets that had generated measurable value. The relationship development evidence included documentation of specific business opportunities that had originated through my networking activities, client entertainment events I had organized or coordinated, and ongoing relationship maintenance, work that had supported client retention and repeat business generation. Dr. Morrison's evaluation approach recognized these activities as professional business development contributions rather than social activities. The fourth session addressed operational support contributions, examining the comprehensive household and family management responsibilities I had undertaken to enable Robert's intensive focus on business development activities. The evidence demonstrated that this operational support had created significant value by freeing Robert from time-consuming domestic responsibilities and providing stable family foundation for his professional activities. Dr. Morrison's analysis of operational support contributions involved evaluation of the complexity and professional skill requirements associated with managing multiple properties, coordinating family financial planning, overseeing children's educational development, and maintaining social calendar activities that supported business relationship development. The mediation framework recognized these contributions as professional services that had created measurable economic value. The operational support analysis also addressed the management and coordination skills I had developed through these responsibilities, including project management capabilities, communication effectiveness, and strategic planning abilities that had application beyond domestic contexts and represented professional competencies with market value. The fifth session focused on my independent professional achievements and the growth of my consulting practice, addressing Robert's attempts to minimize my business success as secondary or dependent on his financial support. The evidence demonstrated that my consulting practice had achieved significant success and professional recognition based on my individual capabilities and client service effectiveness. Dr. Morrison's evaluation of my professional achievements included analysis of client testimonials, project outcomes, revenue generation, and industry recognition that established my consulting practice as a legitimate business asset with significant growth potential. The mediation process provided framework for valuing my professional reputation and client relationships as marital assets subject to consideration in settlement calculations. The professional achievement analysis also addressed the potential for continued growth and expansion of my consulting practice following the divorce settlement, including assessment of market opportunities, competitive positioning, and resource requirements that would determine future business development prospects. Throughout the mediation sessions, Robert's participation evolved from reluctant acknowledgement of my contributions to more engaged discussion of how settlement terms could reflect our partnership reality while addressing both parties' future needs and objectives. The mediation process provided him with opportunity to process the implications of the evidence while maintaining dignity and professional standing. Dr. Morrison's approach to facilitating these discussions demonstrated sophisticated understanding of the emotional and psychological dimensions of partnership recognition, providing Robert with framework for accepting settlement terms that acknowledged my contributions without requiring him to completely reconstruct his understanding of his professional identity and achievements. The mediation process also addressed the practical implications of different settlement structures for both parties' future financial security and professional development opportunities. Dr. Morrison's analysis included evaluation of property, division alternatives, support arrangement options, and business relationship considerations that would affect long-term outcomes for both Robert and myself. The comprehensive nature of the mediation sessions provided opportunity for detailed examination of complex partnership dynamics and contribution patterns that had developed over 22 years of marriage. The process enabled both parties to develop more complete understanding of how our collaborative relationship had functioned and the value that had been created through our combined efforts. The mediation represented the proving ground where months of preparation, evidence gathering, and strategic positioning would be tested against the practical requirements of achieving sustainable settlement agreements. The sessions provided opportunity to demonstrate that my contributions had been essential to our shared success while establishing foundation for future independence and professional growth. The proving ground dynamics revealed the strength of Catherine's strategic approach and the validity of the evidence she had assembled over months of investigation and analysis. The mediation process validated the comprehensive documentation while providing framework for converting that evidence into concrete settlement outcomes that would serve my long-term interests and acknowledge the partnership nature of our marriage. The breakthrough in our mediation proceedings came from an entirely unexpected source that would fundamentally alter the dynamics of our settlement negotiations and provide powerful validation of the partnership contributions I had documented. Throughout the divorce process. During the third week of mediation sessions, Catherine received a call from Maria Santos, the Chief Financial Officer of Denver Commercial Properties, one of the largest commercial real estate development firms in the Rocky Mountain region, and a direct competitor to Robert's company. Maria's request for a confidential meeting initially seemed puzzling, given her professional relationship with a competing firm and the sensitive nature of our ongoing divorce proceedings. However, Catherine's experience with complex divorce cases had taught her that industry professionals often possessed valuable perspective on business relationships and professional contributions that could significantly affect settlement negotiations. She arranged for Maria and myself to meet at her law office the following afternoon. Maria Santos arrived at the meeting carrying a substantial portfolio of documents and wearing the serious expression of someone who had made a difficult decision to involve herself in proceedings that could affect her professional relationships within Denver's commercial real estate community. Her opening statement immediately clarified the significance of her intervention and the potential implications for our settlement discussions. "Mrs. Castellanos," Maria began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 15 years analyzing commercial real estate transactions and business partnerships. "I have information about your contributions to your husband's business. Success that I believe you and your attorney need to understand. What I'm about to share with you may be uncomfortable, but it's information that affects the valuation of Castellanos Development and your rightful claim to partnership recognition." The documents Maria presented revealed a comprehensive analysis she had conducted of Castellanos Development's business development patterns, client relationship origins, and competitive positioning strategies over the past decade. As Chief Financial Officer for a competing firm, Maria had professional reasons to monitor Robert's company's activities and had developed detailed understanding of how his business relationships had developed and been maintained over time. Maria's analysis demonstrated that a significant percentage of Robert's most profitable development projects had originated through business relationships that could be traced directly to social connections and networking activities I had initiated or maintained. Her documentation included specific examples where client introductions I had facilitated had led to multi-million-dollar development contracts that had been crucial to Castellanos Development's growth and market positioning. "The commercial real estate industry in Denver is smaller than most people realize," Maria explained, presenting detailed relationship maps that illustrated the interconnected nature of business development within the local market. "Success depends heavily on trust relationships and personal connections that often develop through social interactions and community involvement, rather than formal business presentations. Mrs. Castellanos has been instrumental in creating and maintaining many of the relationships that have driven her husband's company's success." The relationship analysis Maria had prepared revealed patterns that had been invisible to Robert, but were apparent to industry professionals who understood how business development actually functioned in the commercial real estate sector. Her documentation showed that my involvement in community organizations, charitable activities, and social events had created numerous opportunities for business relationship development that Robert had subsequently converted into profitable projects. Maria's professional insight extended beyond simple relationship mapping to include analysis of how my strategic consulting background had influenced Robert's business positioning and competitive strategy development. Her review of public records and industry communications revealed instances where strategic recommendations I had provided had shaped Castellanos Development's approach to market opportunities and competitive challenges. "Your strategic consulting expertise has been evident in how Castellanos Development has positioned itself in the market," Maria continued, presenting analysis of competitive positioning strategies that reflected sophisticated understanding of market dynamics and customer needs. "The strategic thinking behind many of your husband's most successful projects bears the hallmarks of professional consulting analysis rather than typical real estate development approaches." The business analysis Maria had conducted also revealed financial patterns that supported Catherine's assertions about my contributions to the company's success. Her examination of publicly available financial information and industry performance metrics demonstrated that Castellanos Development had achieved superior performance results during periods when my involvement in strategic planning and business development had been most intensive. Maria's decision to share this information reflected her recognition that the evidence Catherine had presented during our mediation sessions was consistent with her professional observations about how Robert's business had actually developed and achieved success. Her analysis provided independent validation from a credible industry source who had no personal interest in our divorce proceedings, but possessed detailed knowledge of Denver's commercial real estate market dynamics. The timing of Maria's intervention proved particularly significant because it occurred during a period when Robert's legal team was attempting to minimize the importance of my relationship development contributions by characterizing them as social activities rather than professional business development work. Maria's industry expertise and detailed analysis provided powerful counter-evidence that demonstrated the strategic value of relationship building in commercial real estate success. Maria's presentation also addressed the broader industry context that had shaped Robert's business development opportunities over the past decade. Her analysis revealed that Denver's commercial real estate market had become increasingly competitive, with success depending more heavily on relationship advantages and strategic positioning than on pure technical capabilities or financial resources. The companies that have thrived in this market environment are those that have developed comprehensive relationship networks and strategic positioning advantages, Maria explained, presenting comparative analysis of successful firms and their business development approaches. Castellanos Development's success pattern reflects exactly this type of relationship-based competitive advantage, which your contributions have been essential in creating and maintaining. The industry analysis also revealed that my professional background in strategic consulting had provided capabilities that were particularly valuable in the evolving commercial real estate market. The increasing complexity of development projects and regulatory requirements had created demand for strategic thinking skills that many traditional real estate professionals lacked, but that I possessed through my consulting training and experience. Maria's documentation included specific examples where my involvement in industry events and professional associations had created visibility and credibility for Castellanos Development that had translated into business opportunities and competitive advantages. Her analysis demonstrated that my professional reputation and networking activities had enhanced Robert's company's market positioning in ways that generated measurable business value. The unexpected alliance with Maria Santos provided Catherine with additional leverage for settlement negotiations, while also offering me professional validation from a respected industry expert who understood the commercial real estate market dynamics that Robert's legal team had been attempting to minimize or dismiss. Maria's analysis supported every major aspect of the partnership contribution claims Catherine had been advancing throughout our proceedings. Maria's professional credibility proved particularly important because her analysis was based on objective business evaluation rather than personal relationship considerations. Her assessment of my contributions reflected industry expertise and competitive intelligence gathering rather than friendship or support motivations, providing the kind of independent validation that carried significant weight in settlement discussions. The alliance also revealed additional aspects of my professional reputation within Denver's business community that I had not fully recognized or appreciated. Maria's analysis demonstrated that my strategic consulting work and community involvement had created broader professional recognition and market credibility than I had understood, providing foundation for expanded business development opportunities following the divorce settlement. Maria's intervention in our mediation proceedings also demonstrated the professional networks and industry relationships that would support my continued success as an independent consulting professional. Her willingness to provide expert analysis and potential testimony reflected the respect I had earned within Denver's business community and the professional support available for my future career development. The comprehensive nature of Maria's analysis provided Catherine with additional evidence for challenging Robert's business valuation and supporting claims for greater partnership recognition in settlement calculations. The industry expert perspective on my contributions added professional credibility to the extensive documentation Catherine had already assembled through months of investigation and analysis. Maria's documentation also revealed opportunities for strategic positioning of my consulting practice within Denver's commercial real estate community following the divorce settlement. Her analysis demonstrated market demand for strategic consulting services that combined business analysis capabilities with industry relationship networks, positioning me advantageously for business expansion and development. The unexpected alliance transformed our mediation dynamics by providing independent professional validation of partnership contributions that Robert could no longer dismiss as exaggerated claims or biased interpretations. Maria's industry expertise and objective analysis created additional pressure for settlement terms that reflected the documented reality of our collaborative business relationship. The professional recognition implicit in Maria's analysis also provided emotional validation that complemented the legal vindication Catherine's evidence had achieved. The respect and credibility my professional work had earned within Denver's business community provided confidence for pursuing continued success and growth as an independent consulting professional. Maria's intervention demonstrated the broader professional network and industry recognition that would support my transition to independent practice following the divorce settlement. The alliance revealed resources and relationships that extended beyond immediate legal proceedings to encompass ongoing professional development and business expansion opportunities. The timing and significance of Maria's unexpected alliance provided momentum for achieving settlement terms that would acknowledge my partnership contributions while ensuring financial security and professional independence for my future. The industry expert validation added compelling evidence to Catherine's comprehensive legal strategy, creating conditions for successful resolution of our complex divorce proceedings. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.